Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Lisa Mangini's short story chapbook, Perfect Objects in Motion. So first off, Lisa is a colleague here at Penn State. She works in the English department with me. This is the first of her books that I've read, and it's really interesting. It kind of does exactly what it says on the tin. The focus of these stories, what makes them really cool, is that they are very much object-oriented. They are fascinated by small things in the world. So the refraction of a straw going into a glass of water, the graffiti on a train as it goes by, a partner's hair while they're sleeping, the lights the lights on the road at night. These sort of external objects are really beautifully depicted in ways that connect to the narrator's emotional experiences of longing for connection, of separation, of anxiety about the status of the relationship that's at the center of the book. Because the key relationship across these short stories, or most of these short stories at least, is this couple in a long distance relationship. And they're sort of the difficulties, the anxieties of this relationship, in which they're driving long distances on weekends to spend small amounts of time with one another, and the sort of emotional challenges of this. But again, really kind of the focus is on objects, on things in the world, and how these become these sort of almost fetish items in the Freudian sense, where like these objects in the world, these items in the world, take on this almost magical ritual type significance. Things become significantly more important than they are in themselves because they are in some way connected to this relationship and the narrator of the story's sort of emotional experience of that relationship. So I'm going to read you two of these short stories, and they are very short. Two of these short stories that I think really sort of illustrate this point. So the first one I'm going to read is called Long Distance Lemonade. 3 pounds of lemons in a mesh yellow bag sit on the passenger's seat as you back your car out of his cracked driveway. There are a dozen in all, 1 lemon for each hour you will have to drive on this visit. 6 out, 6 back. You practically had a tantrum at the grocery store earlier. He could not fathom why you so desperately wanted these lemons, so many of them. He called you frivolous, but tossed them into the cart anyway, to please you. What you really wanted was something, just one thing that could be spontaneous, something that didn't need to be scheduled in advance. While it was still daylight, you could smell their scent, faint citrus wafting through the car, heated by the sun baking them through the windows. It's night now, cooler, and you can't smell them anymore, but you can see them almost glowing beside you, even in the dark. Flashes of fireworks begin to burst and melt in the sky over the highway. You'd forgotten it was July 4th. They looked like hundreds of white moths gathering in the shape of a cheerleader's pom-pom, shaken open and full. Let's go, LETSGO. How nice it is, you think, to enjoy them this way, without the noise, the crowds. How simple and easy things are for you now. You'd forgotten it was also July 4th, the first time you ever said, I love you, to him. 6 months in, you were at the beach. You'd met his parents the evening before. It had to be safe to say it, right? And yet it hurried out of you like a whimper from Pandora's box. Something almost pained about it, and you've never been sure why. The smell of burnt fireworks filters through the vents. The air smells like someone lit a whole box of matches at once. It reminds you of the cigarettes you used to smoke, the strong drink perched in your hand during these occasions, or the occasional joint at a party. Really, it reminds you of everything you've given up for him to make him happy. You think back on the other men, a clique of 3 or 4 you would date throughout the year, uninterested in choosing just one. You tally the many weekends spent months in advance, on reserve for him, regardless of who drives to whom. Of course, you reason he also sacrifices those same weekends, too. There's an equity to this arrangement. You wouldn't consent to it otherwise. When you get home, you cut each lemon down the middle and strain your fingers, squeezing out the juice. The seeds, firm and slippery, are not unlike Tic Tacs in your mouth as you move them around your teeth, an impulse you don't understand, but is still satisfying, sort of. Your cuticles burn, stinging and sticky. The grit of the sugar feels like sand, and you wonder if you'd ever get used to living out there with him, landlocked. The thought of it makes you want to drop everything and drive to the ocean right now, only 20 minutes south. But you made such a fuss about wanting this lemonade, and now you're committed to seeing it through. As you stir the contents of the plastic pitcher, you laugh to yourself a little, thinking of that saying, when life gives you lemons, despite that you purchased these very lemons on purpose. You wanted to transform something. Your phone rings and you know that he's calling to make sure you're home safely. The instinct to answer makes your arm twitch. The answering machine fills your kitchen with his voice. Mabel just wanted to check in and make sure you made it home okay. Can't wait to see you again. Just hearing him makes your shoulders go slack as you imagine him there, rubbing your back as he often does. You tell yourself to shake it off. It's only a matter of time before he realizes he's too good for you. You wonder where you get that idea from, that you are somehow lesser, that you've just driven 367 miles and made lemonade from scratch and do not have the energy to analyze your own insecurity. You strike a match, breathe deep, and light a candle. As you grab ice for your glass, you notice the horizontal vodka bottle in the freezer for special occasions. But think better of it, despite it being a holiday. He'd be disappointed. You gather up the yellow rinds from the cutting board, tossing them one by one into the trash. In the morning, your whole house will smell like furniture polish or dish soap. You will wake to a home that feels empty and clean. So I think it's a really cool short story. The focus on objects in the world, primarily here the lemons and the fireworks, I think are really, really significant. And one of the things that I find most striking and interesting about this short story is that the significance of the lemons and the lemonade changes multiple times over this short story. So the first explanation we get, in the first paragraph, what you really wanted was something, just one thing that could be spontaneous, something that didn't need to be scheduled in advance. So, I mean, as we find out later in the short story, this is a person, in this case, a second person narrator, who has scheduled their next several months around seeing this person on weekends, seeing the person that they are dating on weekends. So there's clearly this sort of regimented approach to time in this person's life. And so that idea of wanting something spontaneous makes a lot of sense. But then later on, we get this line, I think there's another one, but we get this one line at the end of the second to last paragraph. You wanted to transform something. So again, that idea of like seeking change, seeking maybe growth, because right, there's something productive about making lemonade, right? You're taking lemons, which are, yeah, there's stuff you can use them for as is, but basically you use the juice of them. And when you transform lemons into lemonade, you're transforming them from something that is bitter and tart and sometimes kind of painful to consume to something that's sweet and pleasant. Now, not everybody likes lemonade necessarily, but we can see that transformation here, going from something that is bitter and tart to something that's pleasant and enjoyable. I mean, I think this is definitely an evocative image. We get the same kinds of things in this next story that I want to read you. And this is a very, very short one. Strikingly enough, just one paragraph. We've got this page onto the top of the next page. No paragraph breaks here. That's how short this is. This is called ambiguity. The large pine trees bordering his apartment look threatening at night in her rearview mirror, their sagging boughs dark as if dipped in road tar. It starts snowing, but lightly, just enough where Mabel can only tell there are flakes by the tiny drops on her windshield. There will be nothing to look forward to for a long time. Tomorrow she'll stay at home in the quiet, perusing Kierkegaard for her own studies. He'll return to his lab and think of nothing but numbers and variables for days. She looks out the window at the city and how, even for Sunday night, it seems especially still. So many of the houses dark, mostly semis sharing the interstate with her. Up ahead, she can see some configuration of lights, but is unsure of what they are. She never noticed them driving home before, probably because it was not quite dark enough. Too crowded with cars to look away from the road long enough, not close enough to Christmas. Will there ever be a holiday that she gets to spend with Andrew? Any folded hands and mock grace neither of them believe in? Any turkeys or tinsel or heart-shaped boxes to be had on the designated calendar day instead of an adjacent weekend? The lights get closer, but still vague shapes of something she can't make out. It must be strands of light wrapped around several trees, the way the light is shaped like a row of incandescent bulbs or upside-down heads of garlic, segmented cloves and everything. They could almost be umbrellas. Mabel feels like this is all she does. Try to figure out something from far away and see how accurate she is the closer she approaches the reality. From this distance, the lights remind her of a row of flower buds closed up tight, like so many rhododendron, uncertain if they will open come spring. So again, I think we've got really great use of imagery here to create this kind of reflection of how this character is navigating this relationship. This idea of trying to figure out something from a distance and then assessing closer up, I think is a really good metaphor for particularly something like a long-distance relationship. This idea of being far away from something and then, or in this case from someone, and then going toward them to try and figure out the reality of the situation. And we get here that sort of reflected in the lights that Mabel is seeing through the car window. These lights that she's uncertain exactly what they are. So again, the title of the story is ambiguity, and this points us in the right direction here because we do have ambiguity. We have uncertainty about what these lights are. And that, I think, points us to larger uncertainties within the character herself about maybe how this relationship is going, what the future of this relationship is, etc., etc. And that's a question, that's a concern that comes up at other points in this collection, in other stories, this sort of question of, will they eventually move in together? Are they going to break up, etc., etc.? These sorts of uncertainties about the future. But again, one of the things we have consistently across all of the stories here is a very, almost like, if you're thinking about this cinematically, we have close-ups on particular things in the world, particular objects in the world. And these are symbolic. They represent things. They are evocative. I think it's really well done. It's a really good technique, done really well throughout the collection.